Okay. There we go. That's started. And it's recording. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're just going to be waiting a couple more minutes to see if anyone else is joining. Just letting you know that this is being recorded and live streamed. So if you don't want to turn your camera on or you want to change your name, that's fine. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll answer them at the end. So if anyone else joins. We'll wait just a couple more minutes.
Sorry, Francisca. Sorry, I've now accidentally muted you as well as tried to unmute myself, and I don't know how I've managed it. Just wanted to ask to make sure you've got your YouTube stream on quiet behind you, because I just turned mine on at the same time as having you on and it was absolute chaos. So to make sure you've got that muted on the little speaker on YouTube.
Oh,
if you have it open, just because I ended up opening it at the same time and it was a wild time.
I don't have the stream open. I just have the page that runs the stream.
Fabulous.
That should be fine, yeah? Okay. Just 2 more minutes, see if anyone is joining.
I will put my presentation up on the screen just so that I've got it up ready. There we go.
Shall we start?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anyone else is joining, so.
Fine, if they're late, that's fine.
So would you like to start by introducing yourself and like what you do?
I can indeed. So my name's Bethan Shuff, also Bethan Shufflebotham if you want to find me on my Facebook page. I'm a 23-year-old journalist and blogger. I write for Stoke-on-Trent Live, Staffordshire Live and Cheshire Live, which are all part of the Reach PLC brand. And I also run a couple of my own websites and, as of yesterday, a podcast. So yeah, lots and lots of hats to wear, but all sort of very writing and journalism sort of related. And yeah, get my teeth stuck into social media quite a lot. So yeah, so if I start off by telling you a little bit about why I got into journalism, basically, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I left school in sixth form. Absolutely not a clue. And I went to an open day at Staffordshire University and just thought I'd go and check out the campus. Definitely wanted to go to Staffs because it's very close to where I live, and I still wanted to live at home. I didn't want to live out at university. So had my heart set on Staffs. Took a look around the campus and pretty much stumbled upon a university journalism lecture. And yeah, just absolutely fell in love with what my lecturer was chatting about and thought, yeah, this sounds like it's for me. And funnily enough, it was one of those things where my mum had always had an inkling that that was what I was going to go into. Because can you remember like old school computers that would sit in the corner of the front room and in the family house? And I would sit on Microsoft Publisher making my own little newspaper front pages and stuff. So I must have just always had it at the back of my mind as something that I wanted to do. So I went to Staffordshire University, graduated with a first class honours degree 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago in summer, and got straight into my first full-time job, which was working for Facebook alongside Reach PLC. So it was a brand new scheme which started in 2019, and it was the community reporter scheme. Really, really, really great foot in the door for people who perhaps hadn't studied journalism at university, but really wanted to get into that career path. And yeah, I got accepted onto the community reporter scheme, which was so exciting. We get to go down to London every couple of months and do some training at like Facebook HQ. And it's just so good. And as part of the community reporter scheme, you would get given a very specific topic to cover. So mine was health reporting. So I spent a lot of time at the local hospitals, writing from sort of funding charity events for the hospital's charities, medical miracles, which was just amazing. And one of my very first front pages actually was about an 80-year-old gent that had been told he'd got 3 months to live and had this brand new treatment that they just wanted to try out and see if it could help. And it completely removed his cancer. And writing about that kind of stuff was just, it sort of stays with you forever, and I'll never forget that story. But a big part of it was video content. Obviously, a lot of news sites now are very much focused on getting their audience from social media and Facebook. So you have to be very, very careful and follow a really strict sort of pattern of posting on social media. So for example, at Stoke-on-Trent Live, we post every sort of 45 to 50 minutes on Facebook. We have to have 3 pictures a day in between those to break up the links, and Facebook like us to have video content as well. So we do try and do a Facebook Live wherever we can, but the pandemic has made that very, very difficult because we're trying our hardest to not go out on unnecessary jobs. But it has been quite fun to sort of do some at-home ones. So now I'm in a different role to the community Facebook reporter now, but over Christmas I did one about like how to wrap your Christmas presents and that kind of thing. So we're trying to do some more stay-at-home content at the moment. So after I was a community reporter for Facebook, a vacancy came up full-time with Stoke-on-Trent Live as a live reporter, which was a little bit different. It was much more of a broad variety of topics being covered. So I would go to inquests, I would go to court, I would be out on breaking news the second we found out about it, writing a lot more content per day. Like I say, the community Facebook reporter scheme was sort of for newer journalists trying to get into the industry. It's a brilliant scheme if ever you get the opportunity to join it. But I was only supposed to be doing sort of 5 stories a week, where I was doing more like 5 a day on this new role. But I'm very much the kind of person that likes to bring sort of new ideas and fresh things, like freshen things up a little bit, and put my own sort of twist on things. So I brought back the weekly street style feature, which was something that the paper used to run about 15 years ago. And I only remembered it because my sister featured in it one time. So I was like, oh gosh, why did this end up getting why did this end up stopping? So I brought that back, which was really fun, and something that I'll definitely carry on after the pandemic. Again, we scuppered all our plans, hasn't it? But now, as of summer, sort of August time, I became a life writer for Reach PLC. So still all within the same company, but now instead of just writing for Stoke-on-Trent Live, I write for Staffordshire Live and Cheshire Live as well. The life writer content is very light-hearted, very sort of upbeat, positive news, which is really nice. It's so satisfying to sit there and just like type up good news all day. So it's all sort of like very what's on kind of content. So, I mean, in usual times, again, post COVID, it would be things like theatre reviews or what's on at the cinema and that kind of thing. I've found that during sort of work from home, I've been doing around 20 to 30 stories a week, but they're split across the 3 sites because everyone has to have a sort of an equal balance of articles. I've also been running the Stoke-on-Trent Live Instagram account, which is lovely, seeing everybody's photographs. But in a typical week, I would probably do 3 property articles, 1 for each site. I run the Give a Pet a Home feature, which is where we go out to local kennels, take pictures of 10 dogs and write a little bit about them, which is lovely, and try and get them new homes. More recently, I've been doing a lot of music reviews for local bands, which has been great. And yeah, just the sort of all the positive news about new businesses opening, businesses reopening in the pandemic, and then any sort of press releases that come through as well. So that is my sort of day-to-day job. So journo by day, blogger by night, really, when I get the time. So I'll mention this very briefly. The Leopard Podcast is a podcast that I launched officially yesterday. I've been working on it for the past month or so. I mentioned earlier that I write a lot of music reviews. 5 years ago, when I started off writing for myself, I was a local music journalist. I would go around to all the local gigs, interview local bands, and that's sort of where I started. That was my starting point before university. And obviously throughout uni, getting a full-time job, launching my blogs, the music part of it sort of had to take a bit of a backseat, but now we're in lockdown and I've got loads and loads of time on my hands. The podcast has been able to launch, and it's just a lovely little natter with a couple of other local artists about what they've been up to in the past 12 months and that kind of thing. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that one just because it's very new, and yeah, it's not gained any numbers as of yet, really. But other than that, I also run 2 blogs. So bethshuff.com was the first site that I launched, which is nearly 5 years old now. It started off as, I was working at Boots at the time. I was working on the checkouts at Boots. So it was basically just all of my part-time wages being spent on makeup where I work. And it was just like beauty reviews, budget makeup looks and that kind of thing. Whereas now it's a lot more sort of fashion-based, Staffordshire sort of independent businesses and eateries, and just sort of generally navigating the decade that is your 20s. But I mean, since lockdown, I've been doing a lot of book reviews because there's not much else to do. I can't go out and do reviews of the local area and that kind of thing. So I've just been reading a lot of books. But some of the collaborations that I've had with the blog have been things like Craft Gin Club, Look Fantastic, Dermalogica, McDonald's, strangely enough, send me some bits and bobs every now and again. And it's a really, really fun little passion project, really. It gets about 40,000 views a year, which is absolutely nothing in comparison to obviously the views that we get on the websites at work. But I mean, for a little blog, it's not too shabby. I can't complain. But apparently I didn't have enough things to fill my time with when it came to lockdown last year. So I launched Lady and the Scamps, which is my little dog blog. So I launched that in August. I'd been thinking about it for a while. Absolutely, I could talk about dogs all day. And I think my friends are just fed up of it. So I needed a sort of outlet to just talk about dogs. So it follows the life of my 2 rescue dogs, Phoebe and Frank. And yes, their names are Friends inspired. it features sort of natural treat reviews, local walks, dog-friendly pubs, that kind of thing. They are American Bulldogs, so not a lot lasts in this house. So everything needs to be sort of big dog proof, which is quite hard to come by. So I feel like it's filled a bit of a niche there online. And at the minute we are working alongside Lily's Kitchen, which just seems like a huge collaboration for such a tiny little site. But I think it's mostly because I had bethshuff.com before that. So I already had that sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? I was already sort of a little bit known. So that's definitely helped Lady and the Scamps already get a little bit more recognition than it perhaps would have done if it was my first site. But yeah, there's Phoebe and Frank if anybody wanted to see the dogs. But yeah, how to set up a blog. It's really easy. You could literally do it whilst I'm talking to you if you wanted to. Find something that you are absolutely ridiculously passionate about and can talk about all day. Like I said, for me, that's dogs and apparently just makeup, fashion, anything that I get up to really, I will write about. So yeah, once you've decided on what you fancy writing about, you can choose a host and literally get to work. So what I would typically do is, so for example, when I was setting up Lady and the Scamps, I basically did a little mind map. So wrote Lady and the Scamps in the middle of the page and did loads and loads of branches off of what ideas I might write about. You can start writing that content, sourcing your pictures. I mean, I've got a bag of stuff here, of dog stuff that I need to write about. So I've just got everything in one bag and it's sat ready and waiting for me to split up into different posts, take pictures of, and just get out there. You can decide how often you want to post. At the minute, I post once a week on bethshuff.com and once a week on Lady and the Scamps, just to try and make sure that I am consistently posting. And I use WordPress. So you can get, I use a self-hosted website, which I do have to pay for. It's about £150 a year. But you can get free WordPress websites, which look great. They are lovely. And it's a great place to start if you're not too sure if you want to carry it on, if you're not too sure if you want to take it very seriously. If it's just a bit of fun, I definitely just go for a free site first. You can always upgrade and go self-hosted at a later date, and you can get hosting sites that will transfer all of that content that you wrote when you first started onto the brand new site, which is brilliant. But definitely recommend starting on a free plan if you're not too sure how much time you can commit to the project. And obviously then, as soon as your content is live, you can then go out and promote it to your Twitter, your Instagram, your Facebook, or whatever you've set up to push that content out. Apparently Pinterest is a really good one at the moment to get content on. And speaking of Instagram seems to hate creators for some reason at the minute. So people are trying to find as many ways as possible to try and beat the algorithm, to try and get their content seen. So I'd say that my top 5 tips for Instagram are use every single feature that it puts out, and try and use it almost as soon as it comes out. So when Reels was launched, you need to get on that straight away and start creating Reels, because otherwise Instagram just goes, they're clearly not bothered about using our platform, so we'll just push them to the back of the algorithm, which is always great fun. So yeah, try and do a live once a week, an IGTV once a week. They say try and do more than 1 Reels a week, but we all know how much time it takes to make this content. It's not always viable to do that many. Posting on the grid daily, posting on your stories, Instagram guides. I love Instagram guides. They are just such a nice way to view content. So if you've got 10 pictures of your dog on your feed from the past year, make a guide and go 10 pictures of Phoebe and Frank from 2020. They're just so much fun, and it's just a really nice bite-sized chunk of content. Hashtags. We all love hashtags. Instagram let you use 30 hashtags, so use them if you can. When I say do hashtag research, so what Instagram used to let you do is you could type in a hashtag that was relevant to your post and it would come up with suggestions of similar hashtags that you could use. I don't think everybody's account lets them do that anymore, but you can Google sort of hashtag research sites and come up with a sort of bank of hashtags that you can just save to your notes, copy and paste into your comments every time you do post. Another tip is engage with other people's content. Instagram doesn't like it when you don't do this because it then won't let other people engage with yours. So it's very much a two-way street. You have to comment on other people's posts, and the more you do that, the more your content will be shown to them, because Instagram thinks that, well, you like their content, so they might like yours. So it's very much a sort of two-way robotic AI kind of thing, which is very annoying, but that's the way Instagram is at the minute. Like I said earlier, be consistent. If you can, just post at least one thing on your stories every day, and post on your grid when you can. And the question features as well on stories is really nice, and the polls as well, actually. Ask your followers what they want to see from you. So there's been times where I've been like, oh, I've bought this new product. Do people really want a review of it? Like, do you want to know about it? And they'll either say yes or no, which is really helpful, because if they say no, I don't have to waste my time creating that content, and I can put that energy into something else, creating something that they do want to see. And for example, like posting times as well, I find that I'm on Instagram sort of tea time, 5-6 o'clock-ish, but not everybody is. Maybe my followers are up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's when they want to see my content. So ask them when they find themselves scrolling on Instagram, when they're more likely to engage with that content, and try and stick to those times. But at the same time, don't put too much pressure on yourself, because you still want to enjoy what you're doing. But yeah, I think that's the end of my presentation. But of course, if anybody's got any questions, feel free.
Hi, I've got some questions.
Oh,
Thought I'd go for it.
go for it.
So one question being that I am setting up a blog at the minute that's launching on Friday.
Ooh.
How can I go? Is it worth me creating a separate Instagram for that blog when I use my professional Instagram for everything that's going on it anyway?
I would say it depends on what the blog's about. So I set up a separate Instagram for the dogs blog, because I knew it was just going to be pictures of dogs and treats, and my followers on my Bethan Shuff account weren't going to want to see pictures of pigs' ears, basically.
I don't know, you don't know what they're interested in.
Oh, yeah, dog treats aren't exactly the most aesthetically pleasing, but I
No.
mean, yeah. So what's your blog about? Sorry to turn the question around on you.
It's a food blog.
Oh, see, food blogs are very much their own niche, and it's very exciting, and people love an account where they can click on and just see loads of pictures of glorious food. So I would say in that instance, I'd have a separate account, just so that people know what, I mean, you can throw pictures of yourself in there occasionally if you want to, but I would say, yeah, I think a separate account would work for that quite well. And then obviously you can sort of cross promote, so you can post a picture of the food on your own Instagram account and be like, don't forget to go and follow my food account over there, because everybody loves food.
Great, thank you.
Right.
If anyone has any specific questions, you can put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand. If not, I have a couple of questions as well. So what led you in the first place? Oh, someone's raised their hand. How do I?
Amanda, do you want to share your question?
Oh,
I don't think.
Yes. Hi. Sorry. I think it was unmuted for a second, or muted for a second. My question goes based off of the last person's question. She asked whether or not we should have a different Instagram account according to the blogs. And I would like to know your opinion on if I'm promoting myself as a writer and a freelance writer, if I could just keep it cohesive under one account, and what you think about that.
Okay, so again, I think it depends on what you're writing about. But for example, on Instagram, I have a separate account. I have Bethan Shuff for sort of anything, everyday kind of things. I'll post everything to do with my blog on there, but also if I'm having a piece of cake and a cup of tea, I'll post that on there too. But with my Facebook page, I keep that all in one place. So my Bethan Shufflebotham verified Facebook page has got all my content for Stoke-on-Trent Live, Cheshire Live, Staffordshire Live, bethshuff.com, and the Leopard Podcast on there. The only thing I do have separate is the Lady and the Scamps one, but I do cross-post. I would say if you're a freelancer, then you can definitely keep it all together. I think it's nice to give people who are hiring you a more rounded sense of who you are as a person and a writer, which is quite nice. I think Amanda's muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much. That was helpful.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Emily and I'm the deputy editor of The Demon, but I just have 2 questions. So my first question is just, how do you keep motivated with blogging and journalism at the same time?
Okay, yeah, it can be really hard, especially now working from home, is that I find myself sitting on the sofa for 8 hours a day doing a shift, and then closing this laptop and opening my personal laptop to then write for 2 blogs and edit podcasts. Time management, I think I've got myself into a really nice routine at the minute, especially because the weather's not great. I have to take my photos for my blog on days off when I've got natural daylight, so that tends to be weekends. So I try and bulk all my photos into one weekend, and then I know that throughout the week I can write that content. So, and I'll limit myself as well. So for example, what day are we on now? Tuesday. So once I'm off this call, I will probably write 1 blog post, record the intro for my podcast, and then add it in, export it, and then that's me done then. I'll have my tea and I'll wind down. I think you've just got to sort of get yourself into a nice routine, and know exactly what you're doing every day, which, yeah, it can be really hard, especially when everything is sort of at home on screens all day. But yeah, I think just trying to keep a little bit of variety. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to have nothing to do. And I quite like to have quite a long to-do list, because I know that I've got something to look forward to the next day, as sad as that sounds. But yeah, I think that's how I try and keep myself motivated, chunking everything and making sure that I've got something to do each day, so that I'm not going to be bored, but not overwhelming myself with things either.
Amazing, thank you. And then the other question I had is that you mentioned the community reporter scheme. I just wondered whether you knew whether that was opening this year.
Very good question. I don't. But I think Hold the Front Page post quite a lot about it if there's ever any updates. And if I can find a link with any information, I'll send it over to Francesca, and we'll see if we can find things out for you. But I mean, they had some new people join last year, and the thing is, when somebody comes out of the community reporter scheme because they've gone into a full-time role, their space tends to need filling anyway. So there's occasionally the odd job role that crops up sort of mid-year as well. But I'll have a look into that, and if you want to sort of pop me your email over or something, I'll whiz you some info over if I can find it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, Beth, if you wouldn't mind, if you find out anything about that, and just send it over to Francisca, and I'm happy to send it to everyone who was here from the SPA. Another quick question: what do you take your photos on? Do you use camera, phone? What do you use?
So I have got the iPhone 11. I try and use portrait mode if it's things as simple as like taking a picture of coffee and cake and that kind of thing. Yeah, I'll use my phone. But because I wanted to start doing more video content, I've got a DSLR. I've got the Nikon D3100, and as much as I love it for photos, it's not great for video. It's huge. It's really clunky. So I wanted something that would be better for IGTV videos, reels, and that kind of thing. So I picked up this little thing on Amazon. It's the Canon G7X Mark II, and it's got a lovely little flip-up screen. It wasn't overly expensive either. I think it was about £300-ish. But I mean, it sounds awful, but I stopped using my DSLR because of how good it is. So most of the stuff gets taken on there or my phone, really. Yeah.
Have you got any tips for taking decent pictures on an iPhone? Because I am absolutely shocking at taking good food pictures on mine.
Yeah. I probably haven't got tips on taking photos other than really good lighting, which can be really hard to find if you're in like a restaurant setting, which is irritating because they like to have those sort of dim mood lights. Very, very frustrating. But that's where the camera comes in quite handy because that picks up light quite well. I just think editing apps are probably the sort of best place to start. I use Colour Story, which is a brilliant free app, and I mean some of the presets on there are ace. I did subscribe to the paid for version, which is like a couple of quid a month, but it's definitely worth it. You get hundreds and hundreds of sort of filters that don't look too harsh. So a lot of my mobile editing I'll do on there. But yeah, I just think trying to find natural light or ring lights are really good as well, but again, that you can't just sit in a restaurant with a ring light, which is a bit awkward. But yeah, I think especially with the newer iPhones as well, you can fiddle about with the settings on portrait mode and stuff and change the aperture, which is quite good. But obviously it doesn't help you if your phone's a little bit older.
Thank you.
Okay.
I also have a question, if that's all right.
Of course.
How do you manage your time? Because you said you've got a full-time job, but then you also run 2 blogs and you've got your Instagram accounts and now your podcast. How do you manage to create content for all of that and still do your job?
Lots and lots of lists. So many lists for everything, but I love a good list and I love a good notebook. So I've got loads and loads and loads of stationery. But yeah, I because the podcast is only running for 1 season at the moment and it's going to be about 7 episodes. I've recorded and edited 4 already, and because it launched yesterday, they're going to be released weekly. So I know that I've got until the end of February to record the other 3 and edit the other 3 for March. So I'm not too worried about finding the time to record them yet until it gets to the last week in February and I panic and have to squeeze them all into a week. But in terms of content, once I've got the photos taken at the weekend and I've edited them, I usually take them on a Saturday, edit them on a Sunday. It's done then. And then I sort of leave posts in drafts, half written. And then at the end of a work shift, so I work 8 till 4, and then my mum isn't in until 5. So that hour, I'll try and get a post written. So it's just like a little bit each, it's just sort of like squirreling away and trying to do a little bit each day, and just writing a new list every Sunday night of everything that needs to be done by that week. But again, it's like one of those things, I don't like putting too much pressure on it because then I won't enjoy it. So I'd rather just take my time and work my way through. But I've got like a bank of posts ready to go, really, especially on Lady and the Scamps. I've got about 10-15 posts in pending, ready to go whenever. But yeah, it can be really hard to manage that time, or forget things all the time. If I don't write it on a list, straight away it gets forgotten about, and then panic written in about a week's time. But yeah, definitely just try and write as many lists as I can, and manage it so that I try and do a little bit each day rather than all in one go and overwhelm myself.
Sounds good. And how has this, like having a blog and all these projects, impact you as a journalist? Like, did you become a better journalist? Have you learned like other skills?
I definitely think it's helped me release some creativity, especially when working as a live reporter doing court and inquests quite a lot. It's a very structured way of writing and there's not a lot of scope. Well, of course, there's not a lot of scope for creativity at all in sort of court writing and that kind of setting. But being able to have that sort of creative flow with the blogs has helped me. It's like a muscle that needs flexing. Like if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So having that has allowed me to then come into my life writer role and continue that more creative way of writing. So I definitely think it's made me a better writer, and it's given me my own tone and my own voice. And I think when people read a piece of content that I've written, they can tell that it's me without necessarily reading who the author was, which is quite comforting to know. And it's very important to me to have my own voice out there. but yeah, it can be quite a tricky one to nail, especially when you've got so much going on.
Thank you for that. Has anyone else got any more questions? You can pop them in the group or raise your hand. Go ahead.
I've just unmuted you, Adam. Adam, we've just unmuted you, so if you want to ask your question, go for it.
Oh,
Okie doke. Well, if you want to pop it in the chat, I'm sure we can then answer it vocally.
Tips for building contacts and reaching out to sponsors. Oh, it's a very good question, actually. A lot of my contacts through work have come from setting up the blog initially. So because I was doing a lot of sort of local food reviews and that kind of thing, I've now got a really good relationship with a lot of business owners in the area. And yeah, I think it's not about making a contact and then just keeping a number in a diary or, you know, in a virtual sort of cloud thing. You've got to really nurture working relationships like that. I think, especially when I was working with the hospital, obviously that was a contact that I hadn't made through my blog. It was definitely one that was made through work. You just sort of got to ring them up once a week for a natter, really, just see how they are, if they've got any new things coming up. And in terms of reaching out to sponsors, that's not something that I've personally done, but I definitely think building that relationship first, letting them know what you've got to offer. There's some really good templates online actually for emails like that. Definitely worth having a look at some of those. But yeah, in terms of building contacts, just you got to think of it as more of a friendship, if that makes sense, without the sort of casual sense of the word. It's definitely something that you need to help blossom, I suppose, which is a nice way of putting it. And yeah, just making sure that everybody is aware that if they've got something to share, your name is the one that comes up in their head first. Make sure that you're sort of always at the back of their mind, whether or not that's just an email saying, hey, saw this, don't know if you'd seen it, or even just meeting, well, when you can, meet up with people for a coffee, and just a natter, really, and just keeping in touch and making sure that, yeah, your name is slowly edging their way into the backs of their minds.
I've got one last question on a similar topic.
Yeah.
What is the weirdest or best PR product you've received?
Oh, that's a really good one. I mean, through work, McDonald's send me loads of random stuff on occasion. And it's because I did a really lovely story about a 9-year-old girl who was autistic. She absolutely loved McDonald's, and was like always making her own little stall at home. And one of our local franchisees invited her to McDonald's for the day to go and have a birthday party there, bought her own uniform from their manufacturers, and got her a little birthday cake, and it was the cutest thing ever. So we'd had to go to McDonald's to get some quotes and that kind of thing. And then ever since then, I've just sort of been on the PR list. So they sent me the Big Mac sauce, like went in a squeezy bottle. They recently sent me a hoodie and some wellies for like a virtual at-home festival. Again, really, really strange bits and bobs from McDonald's. And on my blog, I can't think. I've had some really, really lovely stuff, to be fair, but I can't think of anything strange. I've had a PR email today about a sex-scented candle. It's not something that I would request as a PR sample, but apparently it's a thing. It smells like condoms pizza and cocktails, apparently. So yeah, that's probably the weirdest email I've had about PR this week. So
Brilliant. On that, how do you get onto PR lists?
So I used to do a lot of pitching, but obviously with all of the sort of projects that I have, pitching's taken a bit of a backseat. So I'm more or less waiting for people to come to me at the minute, which probably isn't the way it should be done. But yeah, pitching and learning the art of pitching, you've got to really show succinctly what you can bring to the table. It's definitely worth making a media kit if you haven't already, which is basically a miniature CV, I suppose, all about what your content is about, what it is you do, how many followers you have, how many views you get a month, and that kind of thing. I don't know if anybody uses Canva, the website. That's what I used to make my presentation today, but they have some really great templates that you can just build on yourself for that kind of thing. But it's definitely worth making a list of brands that you would love to work with and trying to find out who their PR email is. You can usually find out by Googling, for example, Oliver Bonus PR, and an email will usually come up. Or if you can't find it, you can message them on Instagram and just say, have you got a PR contact that I could contact? And it's all about just getting your name out there, getting your voice out there, not being afraid to ask. You've got to sort of have the attitude, if you don't ask, you don't get. But yeah, it's definitely worth making a media kit. And if brands get in touch with you, you can say, yeah, here's my media kit, here's my rates. Or you can send out pitch emails with that media kit attached as well.
Great, thank you.
So if anyone else got any questions, we've got about like 5 minutes left. If not, if you have anything else you would like to say. Any more questions?
I was going to say, there were a couple of hands up before, weren't there?
No? Okay. As a parting thought. Oh, someone's got a question.
Hi, just a quick question. As somebody who has multiple interests that they honestly can't decide what they want to write about, do you think it's better to have one platform where you keep all your content, or separate platforms where you have a niche and therefore probably a bit more marketability, if that makes any sense at all?
It does make a lot of sense, and it's one that I don't follow. Normally, the argument would be niche down as far as you can and make sure that you post content only about said niche. But that's not something that I do on bethshuff.com, so I can't really say that that's the right thing to do. What I would say is that if you've got sort of content pillars, which is what I sort of follow, so you want sort of 3 or 4 topics, and then that's where people can find you. So I would say that my topics are discounted fashion, so fashion bargains, at the moment easy reading during lockdown, Staffordshire related food and businesses, and then potentially a little bit of just lifestyle-y content. I think it depends on, so for me, I hate the word influencer, but that is the sort of niche that I have, because people follow me not for my content but for me as a personality. As much as I hate that sort of idea, they follow me because they enjoy the things that I talk about and my sort of the way that I talk about it. So it depends really on what your niches are. I mean, if you were going to talk about esports and food, they probably don't go as hand in hand as makeup and fashion, if that makes sense. So it very much depends on what it is that you fancy writing about. But again, if you want to pop me an email over, I'm more than happy to give more detailed advice to anybody that needs it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, if anyone else haven't got any questions, just double checking. All right. Thank you so much, Beth, for doing this talk. I really appreciate it. I found it was really interesting. And I hope that you like to join us as well. Have you got anything else you'd like to say?
I don't think I do. I just, again, if anybody wants to pop me over an email, if they want any more extra advice, if they want me to read over a media kit, I'm more than happy to do that whenever I get the chance. I'll put my email in the chat box now, actually, so that everybody can see that. But yeah, it's one of those. My DMs are an open door, really. If anybody ever needs to ask a question or want to know where to get a camera and that kind of thing, I'm always happy to reply.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for attending. We'll see you in the next one in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much, Beth, for doing this. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for coming, everybody.